Story 1. As a teenager, I ate a fast food Caesar salad and nothing else that day, drank far more alcohol than I could handle, and threw it up across my friend's basement. I had to clean everything while I was sick because my friends were even sicker. Since then, Caesar salad has tasted like vomit to me. Story 2. Raw oysters. One bad experience was enough for a lifetime. Story 3. Red velvet cake. It was not what made me sick, but red was all I saw for 2 days after I got food poisoning. Story 4. Unflavored or savory gelatin. How was this so popular in the 1950s? Story 5. Boba. 18 years ago, my friend and I were freshmen in college. We went downtown for dinner at a Thai restaurant. We had pad Thai noodles and boba tea. Afterwards, we returned to campus and smoked a large blunt. I got too high and felt dizzy. I vomited the pad Thai noodles and boba tea. I had swallowed the boba whole, so the tapioca pearls came back up whole, like a little army of slimy balls. The best way I can describe how it looked and felt is when Ron Weasley's spell backfires and he keeps throwing up slugs in the second Harry Potter book and movie. My friends and I loved boba, but I have not been able to have it since this happened. Story 6. Steak tartare. I was staying in France with a friend who insisted I try it despite my reluctance. I spent half of my trip sick and saw a doctor, who confirmed I had food poisoning. Story 7. Brains. My mom forced me to eat them as medicine. I watched her peel off the dura mater, devein and steam them. Then I had to eat them after dinner, unseasoned because it was medicine. Story 8. Liver and onions. My parents forced us to eat it once when I was a child, and I have not had it since. It would take an act of a higher power to make me try it again. Story 9. Tequila rose or any cream-based liqueur. Story 10. Haddock, not because of an experience eating it. I lost the final round of a spelling bee because I spelled it Haddic, and I have had a vendetta against that infernal fish ever since. Story 11. Sea urchin. I wasn't sure what to expect, but holy Christ, not that. Story 12. I had a bad egg salad sandwich at a picnic when I was a child and became violently ill, suffering severe vomiting and diarrhea. I ended up in the hospital with bloody diarrhea. Several others at the picnic also became ill. Investigators traced the outbreak to salmonella in the egg salad. Just the sight or smell of egg salad makes me nauseated. And it has been more than 50 years. Story 13. Chocolate-covered ants tasted salty and gritty and were stuck in my teeth for hours afterward. Story 14. My parents boiled most vegetables, but Brussels sprouts stuck with me into adulthood. The first time I had them roasted, I was angry at my parents for what they had put my sister and me through. Story 15. Ballot. Too crunchy, and for the love of God, don't look at what you're biting into. Story 16. I don't know what happened, but it felt like a bad acid trip. I'm not sure whether you can get ergotism from quinoa or whether an allergic reaction could cause you to dissociate like that, but it was freaky. Story 17. Mushrooms. Pizza Hut seemingly dumped the whole can, including the water, onto the pizza and then covered it with cheese, trapping the liquid and mushrooms as an unwelcome surprise. Story 18. Tofu. Turns out I am okay with soy sauce but have an intolerance to soy protein. The intestinal reaction is violent. Story 19. I tried surströmming served the traditional Swedish way with potatoes, butter, and onions on Swedish rye bread that reminded me of a thick tortilla. I had half a fillet chopped on mine. The smell was like a very old, dirty dumpster with various liquids inside. The taste was similar to wasabi, accentuating other flavors, but instead of bursts of heat, it was waves of garbage. I'm glad I got to try it once, but once is enough. Story 20. Durian has an awful smell and a slimy, fatty, snot-like texture. Story 21. I ate at Arby's. The mayo on the sandwich tasted off. My mother was frustrated and told me to eat it. I had food poisoning for a week. She called the next day to warn them so no one else would get sick. They called her crazy, said no one else had complained so it was not their fault, and refused to change the batch of mayo. I will never go there again. It has been almost 25 years. Story 22. Chef Boyardee's ravioli. I was 8 and had a bad case of the flu and was out of school for a week. During that time, my older sister fed me ravioli. She kept the next bite ready before I had even finished chewing. Because I was young and sick, I would quickly chew, swallow, and move on to the next bite. Later that day, I projectile vomited, and my sister had to clean it up. To be fair, I was right by the toilet, and she had even said that if I was going to throw up, the toilet was right there. I genuinely thought I was going to burp and that we would laugh it off. We did not, and she did not laugh out loud. Story 23. It was not something I ate. In college, my roommate did not shower or do laundry and smelled like Smart Food white cheddar popcorn. 10 years later, I still cannot stomach its smell or taste. Story 24. That Midwestern sweet potato dish with brown sugar and marshmallows on top. My elementary school in North Dakota served it occasionally, and I could not eat it. I gagged the second it touched my mouth. I could eat stewed tomatoes and what they called corned beef hash just fine, but not the sweet potatoes. Because the school required you to clean your plate, I missed recess when they served it. I could not choke it down, and I will never try it again. Just the thought makes me gag. I tried it again as a teenager and still could not get it down. Now I am 47 years old and I still would never try it. By the way, what they called corned beef hash was just ground beef and corn with no seasoning. It smelled like old sweat socks, but it was still better than the sweet potatoes. Story 25. I went to a well-known seafood buffet on the coast and tried a crawdad. I cracked the claw and it was black and gooey. It was vile. Story 26. Egg custard. I had it cooked in a traditional retro style, scrambled instead of served as a dessert, and my brain nearly blew a fuse trying to reconcile why it tasted like candy. It was a 0 out of 10 experience, no matter how kind the 80-year-old man who prepared it was. Story 27. Anything with unrendered fat. Yeah, I like fat, but this is a texture thing for me. Story 28. Umeboshi plums. I thought they would be incredibly sour, but they were very salty and unpleasant. Story 29. I had fresh grilled octopus in Japan. It was like trying to eat an old rubber eraser. Story 30. Cilantro tastes like soap to me. Someone pointed out that it is genetic. Story 31. Star Crunch. It wasn't Little Debbie that betrayed me. It was one time when I was 9 and had the stomach flu. That was the last thing I ate before my stomach gave out on me. Story 32. I got food poisoning from Chipotle more than once. I should have learned the first time. Story 33. Eel sushi. I'm sure some people will act like it's life-changing and say I must try it again because they like it, as if someone else not liking it is impossible. But I'm fine. There is plenty of food I enjoy. Story 34. I drank Soylent, not the people kind. I must have had a bad batch. I vomited and had diarrhea for 8 hours straight and experienced hallucinations. I got my money back at least. Story 35. I was 12. I bought some teen magazines and a container of multicolored rock candy, crystallized sugar dyed with food coloring, with my allowance at the corner grocery store. I walked home and ate the entire container. I had never felt so sick in my life, and I have not touched the stuff since. It has been decades. Story 36. Oysters. I do not think I need to explain, but they are like eating snot. No way. Story 37. Foie gras is horrible. It is inhumane, and the texture is like the globules of fat you clean off a chicken. It is like sautéing one of those for a second and eating it still raw. Story 38. Pickled eggs. No, I have tried them, so you do not have to. Story 39. Vanilla protein shake. I accidentally drank one that was well past its expiration date. Story 40. That marshmallow fluff spread you put on bread. One night I ate it by the spoonful and then came down with the worst flu I've ever had. Throwing up marshmallow was certainly an experience. Now whenever I see it, I cringe. Story 41. It was a lifetime of bad experiences, and it was crab. My parents loved crab, but we were poor, so it was largely relegated to special, rare occasions. On those rare occasions, my father would buy a whole crab. They lined the entire kitchen and dining room with newspaper, covering the countertop, the island, and the stove, even taping it to the walls. Then they cracked that sea creature, wrestling the legs from the hard shell, using the claws to pick the meat out, or sucking it out like a straw or blowing it like a dart gun. Hammers, nutcrackers, and forks, every utensil was a weapon. Our dogs ran around, lapping up any bits that did not land on the table. Pools of melted garlic butter splashed and dripped to the floor. Garlic, bad for dogs, be damned. At one time, I had a Labrador that had zero qualms about stealing a leg or snatching a chunk of meat. My dog and a parent would fight over that meat, with the victor getting the larger piece. I also had a pet rat. My dad thought it was hilarious to let the rat sit on the table and chow down on buttered crab meat. My mom hummed happily as the family slurped and shucked. My dad would growl and burp along with the dogs as they barked and yelped. My rat crunched through the shell. If you still do not get it, watch the Croods. That is my family. Whenever I came home and saw that newspaper, I would grab my bike and head over to a friend's. 30 years later, I am married, making more money, and it is still like that. My significant other, my mother, and my kids behave exactly like that, and not a single crab bite is wasted. Now we have 9 cats and 3 dogs competing for a bite. Our boldest cats made daring leaps to steal a leg. Our half-brained dogs lapped up spilled garlic butter and mushy bits of meat. Whenever I see that newspaper now, I grab the one child who does not like crab and head over to the barbecue place. Story 42. Well, back in June of this year, I had some pasta salad. I started to get a stomachache that evening and decided I would just lie down and sleep it off. I woke several hours later with a stomach cramp that would not let up. I became very nauseous and lay there in pain. I started to feel dizzy, as if my head were spinning while I was lying down, which made the nausea worse. At one point, I was curled up in the fetal position on my bedroom floor, writhing in pain. I crawled to the bathroom to vomit and vomited forcefully several times. I then crawled into the shower, turned on the hot water, and fell asleep on the shower floor. That was the worst of it. I did not eat for 3 days afterward, only drinking a lot of Gatorade. Took me a week to feel normal again. Whatever it was, it wiped me out. It had to have been the stomach flu or something. I cannot recall ever feeling that bad. Laughing out loud. Story 43. Basa. I was looking for alternative, cheaper options for fish and decided to try it. Tasted like I had licked the bottom of a pond. It was absolutely foul. Story 44. The seafood platter at the Oriental Wok was a big bowl of seafood soup. I went there with my mom as a kid and tried it. I call it seafood because it had more than just fish. I think it had mussels. I tried a few spoonfuls but could not get past the smell. Story 45. Durian. I got one whiff and could not bring myself to eat it. Story 46. During recess in a 3rd grade classroom, the teacher left the room for 5 minutes. I had just eaten my weight in pretzel sticks when a friend asked, "Hey, would you like me to spin you around really fast in the teacher's chair?" I did not get sick, but I almost did. Over a decade later, I still cannot eat a pretzel stick without becoming dizzy and nauseous. Story 47. Everclear. Not a food, but whatever. When I was too young and too naive, my roommates thought it would be funny to make me take multiple shots of Everclear quickly. I knew it was strong, but like I said, I was young. They later said they thought I would collapse after the first. They had no idea I actually took all 4 shots. I am pretty sure I got alcohol poisoning that night, and I remember every damn detail. I have no idea why, but my normally terrible memory gets better with alcohol. It was easily the worst night of my life. I could not drink alcohol for nearly 5 years afterward, and to this day, over 20 years later, I cannot be in the same room as Everclear. Story 48. I ate so many green olives in one sitting that I vomited for hours. I cannot even smell them anymore without feeling nauseated. Story 49. I was 9. Back in the 90s, that was plenty old to be home alone. We had just bought a brand new tub of butterscotch ice cream. I dug through it and ate every butterscotch piece, nearly the whole tub. I vomited a lot. I am now 37 and still cannot eat that ice cream. The smell turns my stomach. Story 50. Boiled okra. If you have ever seen it, you will know why. I had to pretend to eat it at a guest's home when I was a teenager. Story 51. Porridge. I love Wheat Bix, but only with cold milk, not hot. Money was tight when I was growing up, and my parents tried to get me to eat porridge, presumably because it was slightly more cost-effective than boxes of Wheat Bix. I refused to eat it because it smelled awful, and my parents put me in a headlock to try to force a spoonful into my mouth. After a struggle, they managed to get a spoonful in, and I spat it across the table. We never tried again. Now the smell of porridge makes me gag. The same goes for risotto. Story 52. Cho tofu. I can eat anything. Bring on whatever local food is scary to foreigners. I am game. The first time I tried cho tofu, I became very sick. Now just the smell is enough. Story 53. I don't think they exist anymore, but there used to be Hostess Ho-Hos with nuts. I do not think they made me sick, but one of them probably triggered a stomach problem. I vomited at school, and I can still recall the aftertaste that kept making me vomit. It took years before I could eat a Swiss cake roll again because it tasted too similar. Story 54. When I was a kid and they first released the Hershey's cookies and cream candy bars, I had too much of one and threw up. It took a long time for me to even try white chocolate again, and I have yet to eat that Hershey's bar. Story 55. Fried white fish. I had a fried cod cake in Portugal that was either spoiled or cooked in bad oil. It tasted off, but I did not want to be rude and did not trust my instinct. I then had the worst case of food poisoning I have ever experienced, with both vomiting and diarrhea, which began as our 10-hour flight from Paris to the United States took off. Story 56. After 3 continuous rides on the wheelie at Six Flags over Georgia, a funnel cake makes me nauseous. Just the smell is enough. Story 57. I used to love raw oysters. I have eaten thousands. I did not realize that with every raw oyster I ate, I was increasing the chance of encountering a bad one. The day I found that oyster ended my taste for oysters forever. It tasted like a mouthful of a dirty diaper and it ruined oysters for me. Story 58. Cow tongue has a texture similar to a human tongue, but not the same. Its taste is indescribably awful for awful. Story 59. Gas station sushi taught me a lesson I did not need twice. Story 60. I had Thousand Island dressing on a salad at work once. I nearly crawled to the bathroom without making it obvious, and I'm not exaggerating. Story 61. Broccoli. My parents forced me to eat it one night, and I could not leave the table until I did. I vomited almost immediately. When I smell it cooking, my mouth becomes very itchy. Turns out I am allergic. How convenient. Story 62. I got a bad muscle. Baked even, from a resort buffet and missed a day of vacation in bed with intravenous fluids. I really like seafood and shellfish, but I will not touch another mussel. I have been tempted by mole's frites once or twice, but I have always played it safe since then. Story 63. Vinegar. When I was a child at my aunt's house, I saw a brown liquid on the counter and thought it was a cola. The rest was history. The smell makes my stomach turn. Story 64. I ate sweet potatoes just before coming down with the flu, and I saw and tasted them in reverse. That was more than 10 years ago, and I still can't even look at them without gagging. Story 65. Fried spam. An ex-boyfriend's veteran mother made it for breakfast once. Story 66. When I was 10, I was ill while on holiday. My dad gave me a bite of his hot dog when we thought I was getting better. I threw up and have not eaten another one since. It has been 15 years. Story 67. Lima beans. To be fair, I knew I would hate them before I ate them. Story 68. Pasta salad is cold, slimy, and mushy. It looks and tastes like something from a garbage disposal. Story 69. I did not like tasting the rainbow after vomiting Skittles for 8 hours. Story 70. I had 3 bad experiences with Wendy's chili in 2005 and have not eaten there in 20 years. Story 71. Black pudding. Knowing it was thickened blood was enough for me. I spat it out. How it tastes, I do not know. Story 72. Mussels. Gyros. Both times I had horrible food poisoning. I am now a strict vegetarian. Story 73. Big Macs are foul. I do not know how I ate them as a kid. I must have been starving to death. Story 74. I normally try foods at least twice, but I will not try sea urchin again. I tried it once at a decent sushi restaurant, and it tasted like rancid, warm snot. I love raw oysters, but never again. Story 75. Not me, but my grandfather ate an olive thinking it was a grape and has not eaten either since. Story 76. Cinnamon hearts. I ate too many of them as a kid and was very sick afterward. Now I cannot eat any kind of cinnamon-flavored candy. Story 77. When I was 5 years old, I ate chocolate-covered cherries with a white filling. They were not very good. I ate just one and became violently sick afterward, though I barely remember it. To this day, I cannot eat them. Thinking about them makes me want to vomit, and I hate chocolate-covered fruit. It is so gross and makes me cringe. I must have almost died from food poisoning if my brain hates them this much, but I cannot actually remember being sick because my parents were not big on doctors. Story 78. My daughter's brownie troupe participated in a large around-the-world event. I ate a number of things, and my favorite was predominantly beet-based borscht. Story 79. I ate some Mike and Ike candies when I was very young and immediately vomited violently. The experience traumatized me so badly that I have never tried them again. Story 80. Parsnips. I was served a chicken stew at a neighborhood potluck a few years ago. I had never had parsnips until that day. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I never will again. Story 81. Lobster mac and cheese smelled like rotten fish and made the whole house stink. After I threw it away, not even the possums would touch it. Story 82. I found a huge centipede in a cauliflower 20 years ago in the school canteen. I have not eaten one since. Story 83. Caramelized onions from a restaurant made me vomit soon after eating. My throat burned and it felt as if fish were coming up from my mouth. It was the worst experience I have ever had. Story 84. Okra. I liked it enough when it was fried or in gumbo, but one night my dad served it steamed as a vegetable at dinner. It was a traumatic experience, and I haven't touched it since. Story 85. Rhubarb. I took a bite of strawberry rhubarb pie once and spat it out. Tasted like celery, which I absolutely hate. Story 86. Eggnog. I am not sure, however, that you can consider it a food. Story 87. Calamari. I was on holiday when I was about 10 or 11, and they had onion rings in the buffet. I bit into one and it was not what I had hoped. Story 88. I got so sick after eating lamb. I am never touching it again. Story 89. I heard cuttlefish was similar to lobster. It was chunky, slimy, and tasted like snot. Story 90. I'm a big fan of vegetables, don't get me wrong, but I really do not like Brussels sprouts. Story 91. Brussels sprouts weren't just bad once. They're always gross. Story 92. Clam chowder was my favorite. I loved it so much I used to eat it nearly 3 times a week. One day I got a bad batch and suffered the worst food poisoning I have ever had. It left me vomiting and suffering severe diarrhea at the same time, sitting on the toilet with a bucket in front of me. My intestines felt like someone was playing double dutch and then tying the rope into a bow. It had me praying to every deity I could remember. I tried eating it years later, but I could not get it past my lips. Story 93. When you go to a restaurant that specializes in a particular cuisine, order that cuisine. I once saw someone order a Mexican burrito at a waffle place and then complain. The place is called Waffle Palace. Why would you order anything besides breakfast food? That said, I once ordered hot wings and fries at a seafood boil place and got food poisoning. My mistake. Story 94. I once took a bite of a Swiss roll that was about 10 years old and it still looked pristine. That was my first experience with a Swiss roll, and to this day I still cannot eat them without thinking of the taste of overly processed sweetness gone very wrong. Marshmallows are similar. I used to get debilitating menstrual cramps as a child, and they would make me extremely nauseous. My parents were making s'mores in the fireplace for fun one day and tried to give me a burnt marshmallow. I took one whiff of the burning sugar and ran straight to the bathroom. S'mores still make me a little nauseous, to be honest. Story 95. As a teenager, I got really into tempura. I made tempura eggplant every day. One day I made it, went to a spin class with my mom, and then vomited violently after the class. Now I cannot even think about eggplant without heaving. Story 96. My mom went through a phase where she tried to feed me broccoli sprouts because she believed a study claiming they help with autism symptoms. I think broccoli sprouts are gross. I think they look like grass, so she bought them in pill form for me. Because I was too scared to swallow pills, I bit into one, and my God, it was awful. Tasted like the worst parts of a plant. I have never had to hold back vomit like that. Story 97. Peach schnapps liqueur tastes as good going down as it does coming up. Story 98. When I was about 10, I saw zucchini on a plate and expected a crunchy cucumber. Instead, I got a very pasty bite. Never again. Story 99. Chitlins. I do not care at all how much hot sauce or how you dress them up. They still taste like well-seasoned feces. Story 100. I lost my cat when I was about to have couscous for dinner. To this day, I have panic attacks when I eat it, so I would rather avoid it completely than feel like I am dying. Story 101. Sea cucumber has a fishy texture and tastes like pork fat. Story 102. I ate cotton candy at a local fair on a hot summer day when I was about 8 years old. After I rode the teacup ride, I became extremely nauseous and vomited cotton candy all over the ground. From then on, both cotton candy and any spinning ride were on my never again list. Story 103. Those glucose drinks you take for the gestational diabetes test during pregnancy. Story 104. Gas station sushi. I gambled with my intestines for $5 and I lost. Story 105. Five Guys. Shit nearly killed me once. I will never go back. It was a shame, though. I used to love that food. My bathroom scale does not miss it at all. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.